So I just want to get us started today and welcome Dr. Mitchell Levy, who is the author of Executive Abundance and someone that I consider a friend in the business, a leadership colleague. He was involved way back in the beginning when I was interviewing people for our Author to Influencer program, and that was 2020. So we've known each other for a long time. Mitchell, I always quote you about C-pop. You taught me that, and I had remembered it as your customer's point of pain. And I saw in your new book, Executive Abundance, that you say point of possibilities now. So welcome. Happy to have you here.
It is great to be here. Yeah, you bring up a lot of really interesting points. I'm looking forward to talking and diving in based on your direction.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I feel like I know you, I actually feel like I have insight into you using the possibilities word versus the pain word. One is very positive, and the other one feels a little harsh.
Oh,
Maybe.
I have to, yeah, I have to tell you the story. I, uh, so you were part of the five. So I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility between 2019 and 2020, and you were part of
Mhm,
the 500.
mhm,
It completely changed my perspective in life and allowed me to understand the definition of credibility, which is the quality which you're trusted, known, and liked.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
And obviously, I feel the need to act those qualities. And there are 10 values. And for those who are seeing this, you could see the 10 values. If you're listening only, you can always just go into AI and say, what's Mitchell Levy's 10 values of credibility? And it'll pop it up for you. Um, one of them is being coachable.
mm,
Another one is being vulnerable. Okay. And at one point in time, if we have time, let me talk about the integrity, which is the only value that appears twice. And we'll come back to that. But I want to go back. So I actually did finish the interviews, wrote the book, Credibility Nation in 2020. I think it came out first in 2021. Then actually did a TEDx on this. It's called "We Are Losing Our Humanity," and I'm tired of watching it happen. And then one of my good friends, Raju Sethi, is somebody who allowed me to do the CPOP. It now stands for Customer Point of Possibilities, but at the time it was Customer Point of Pain, and allowed me to do a recording of giving him his CPOP live. So I created a seat pop for him. Oh my God, it was absolutely amazing. He went away. We then came back and talked 2 weeks later. And here are the first words out of his mouth. He goes, Mitchell, I love this concept. I love my CPOP. And I don't care if you call it customer point of pain. I'm going to call it customer point of possibilities.
mm,
And,
mhm.
there's a lot of sunk cost at this stage. I've done all the work. I published all the material. And it
Mhm.
took me literally 3 to 4 seconds before I said, "Yep, you're right. Me too."
Hmm. Yeah. No, I like it. And see, I picked up on it when I was reading Executive Abundance. I had it so entrenched in my brain as something that was very valuable for me to think about. You had challenged me to think about where our customers were feeling pain. With PR by the book, authors come to us and it's overwhelm. It's all the AI chat bot emails they're getting that are fooling them. It's just not knowing where to go with all the choices that they can have to promote their book. And so you really challenged me to think about where are they suffering and where do we need to help most in all of that, take away all of that overwhelm. So I think that's great. And I took some notes while I was reading Executive Abundance, and I was telling you earlier that I love your title because as someone who grew up as the granddaughter of my grandfather came from the Great Depression, I always felt a sense of scarcity. And our business coach with Action Coach has really helped me think of things in abundance. And I just
Right.
love that that's in your title.
It's really interesting, um, because many of us, I don't call myself it being part of that anymore, but there was probably a point in time where I had scarcity mindset, and many people think about the world in a scarcity mindset.
Hmm.
What executive abundance is not just an abundance mindset, but it's abundance mindset for someone like yourself, for any CEO, for any board of directors, to be able to actually look at the bigger picture of what
Hmm.
does you're now responsible for affecting the lives of, whether it's tens, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions, billions of people,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you have a choice. And at the end of the day, there's now a new question that's not in the book, but I like people to think about. And the question I'd like you to think about is, who experiences this decision?
Mm.
Marika, every decision you make has immediate effects. Do you want to spend money on this avenue, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or for corporations, they have a community service they're doing, and they reach a time of scarcity. The numbers are not looking really good. Oh, let's cut this community service. That's a simple decision, and if you look at it just as an economic decision, that says something.
Hmm.
But who is it who experiences that? And it's the community who now was counting on something that is no longer there. And
Right.
that long term has a bigger ramification than saving a couple of dollars because you've cut a program today.
Right. I also love when you're talking in the book about how leaders often are going from the day to day of responding to stresses versus I wrote down your quote for long-term organizational health. And I think that's so wise. One of the things that I heard recently that I talked to our director of publicity about is walking towards the problem, and that's not fun, right? None of us want to do that. But when we walk towards the problem, we are acknowledging it. We're getting ahead of something. We're anticipating something that might go wrong. For us at PR by the Book, if we have a client that is missing a lot of interviews, then that's not really fun to take care of and handle, but we need to walk towards that problem and maybe talk a little bit about that.
That's a great question. Um, I prefer to answer that question with very specific content. So we could talk
Yeah.
about, you just mentioned you had a client who was missing interviews.
Yeah.
Um, so we could talk about that one in particular. Let me dance around that for a little bit, and then you
Sure.
could focus me. So a lot of times we immediately think there's problems. The classic problem is we need to grow our business quarter over quarter, right? And the answer is technically why. It depends on how we're actually measuring success. If we're measuring success with financial only, well, then maybe that's why. But what if we're measuring other things? What if
Hmm.
we're measuring the quality that our families have by just us being us? What if we're measuring the quality that our customers and our employees get from the experience as well as the community? Well, that changes everything.
Hmm.
Um, what often happens is if we put the lens on of let's make money, then the problem is very obvious. And that is we're not going to make as much money next quarter.
Hmm.
If the problem is something else, we could change what we're focused on. We could change what we're looking at. And so, in the example of, let's say, a client that's missing meetings, um, what has to happen is you need to sort of create a framework around. okay, this is what we're doing for you. These are what our expenses are. And this is the outcome that's happening, but it doesn't just affect us and you in this relationship, but
Mm,
it's affecting us. I mean, it's affecting our ability to book this host the next time, right?
mhm,
So
yeah,
what can we do about this, right?
mhm,
And it's looking at and bringing them into the equation,
mhm,
making them part of the ecosystem so they understand the bigger picture of what their efforts are actually doing, what their
mhm.
actions are actually doing.
Yeah,
Did that answer your question or did I go
it
somewhere else?
does. And I really
Okay.
like the way you frame that of almost like let them come into the solution, have them help figure out what that solution might be. Not just telling them, okay, this is what you will do going forward. It's like, how can we make this happen where you're able to make all your interviews and not leave these hosts hanging? It's their time is valuable. So I like that about, bringing them in. You used a term that I wasn't super familiar with, but I love, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, durable value. Maybe talk a little bit about that because I find that very interesting.
So the great question. And I want to give it specifics. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just share the executive abundance framework, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm going to, by the way, for you who are um, uh, at the stage of the book you're in, you may notice something. So just like Raji Sethi, way back when, gave me an idea that, and it took me about a year before I started changing it from customer point of pain to customer point of possibilities, and I changed a couple other things. Uh, I just got my PhD, the book went out, and I'm prepping for my first big keynote. And what I realized is in the book, I talk about the executive abundance being a 4x5. It's the
Mm,
executive abundance engine by the executive abundance ecosystem. And as soon as I'm prepping this conversation, this for this presentation, I'm like, very similar to a CPOP. A CPOP is the who and the what. The who comes first.
mhm,
And I thought, oh, the executive abundance framework, the who has to come first. Right. And so when you read the book, all the content's great and the same. It's just that the map is going to be flipped. And if I redo the book, I might change the chapter numbers just to talk about the ecosystem first. So what we're talking about is delivering durable value to each of your stakeholders. Right. So when remember this question, who experiences this decision? Um, you recently, while on holiday or while doing something with your husband, said, I'm going to sit down and read a business book, right? Well, that has an effect on your relationship with your husband, right? And positive or negative, right? And but the fact that you asked permission and said, I'd like to do this and I'm having so much value, there's no way he could say no, right? That's part of that relationship is part of durable value, that you're talking to each other over and over.
mm,
Every decision that's made for those business owners who decide to work 12 by 12, 7 days a week, because this is the lie people often tell themselves who are working all the time is I have to work hard. I need to make money so I can provide a better life for my family. All the family wants is for the husband or wife to be around or a mother or father to be around.
mhm,
Right? So that's a lie. So providing durable value, if you just look at it from a financial perspective, it's quite possible if the person's working 12 by 12 by 7 that they're providing durable value for one stakeholder group.
mhm,
But think about all the other stakeholder groups that could potentially suffer as a result.
mm,
Right. And so it has to that word or that phrase needs to be taken in consideration of the bigger picture of who, right? It's who is experiencing every decision you make. And it ranges at first, and by the way, these components are ordered. Now I'm going to talk academic for a second. These are ordered and interdependent. So when I was doing the research, I was able to show that. So what's the most important thing we need to do is we need to focus on family itself. After that, employees. Even our green room conversation, we're talking about how you treat your employees, not just empowering them to be successful, but the respect that you give them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers. If you
Mm-hmm.
take care of the customers, they'll take care of the investors. And you notice that investors are fourth in that order, not first,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we do that within a community. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
let me let me add one more, and we can come back to durable value. Thank you. What's interesting is the engine. The engine is really the how. Is what are we going to do and how do we do it? The what we're going to do is the engine. The how we do it is within the context of every specific situation. And one of the things that I learned from interviewing the 500 is that 98% of companies and individuals do not have clarity. And so if they don't have clarity, and the rest of the engine comes, it's ordered, starts with clarity, then goes to credibility, consistency, and commitment. How good can the rest of the engine be if the leaders don't have clarity? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's really important. So I'm really glad you grabbed onto the C-pop and sort of bundled that into you because that is one of the most important things we can do. Oh, I'm going to tie your term together. That's one of the most important things you could do to bring abundance to yourself and those around you by delivering durable value.
I love that. And in the book, you also talk about a crisis of credibility. And I think that's very timely. So maybe speak to that a little bit as our last point here before we wrap up. Talk to us a little bit about crisis of credibility.
You know, the if the only thing we ever do is care about money, what are we losing? Um, I'll give you a story which is exemplifying a crisis of credibility. A friend of mine, last corporate client they ever worked for, spent 2.5 years working on a deal for the client I'm sorry, the employer they were working for. Up until this time, the biggest deal the employer ever did was somewhere between 100 to 200,000.
Hmm.
My friend ended up closing a $1.2 million deal,
Wow.
like significantly different than it took a year and a half to do. Now, the company itself had hit a time of scarcity, i.e., the numbers were looking good. They were looking to find a way to trim cost,
Hmm.
and they fired her without paying the commission,
Oh no.
right? So, by the way, clearly it's in their right, and many companies do that, expecting a lawsuit to come. And her standing up for herself was, I didn't want to spend the next 2 years fighting it. Even if I won, then I'd be reveling in this pain for 2 years. Not worth it.
Mm.
But that company has completely lost credibility with anyone who knows that story.
Hmm.
Right? It's
Right.
just that crisis, like to even think that that's okay.
Right.
Right? Imagine that to any of your people. It's the
Hmm.
thing is if you have the credibility or the desire, or in this case, the executive abundance, if you're actually saying, my job is to provide value, not just to my family, but to the employees and to the customers, and I want to make sure the investors are okay and the community,
Hmm.
then you can't satisfy one stakeholder only
Hmm.
while stepping on the other four or stepping on one or two more.
Right.
That's the crisis of credibility is we're so focused on making the almighty dollar or whatever currency that is,
Mhm.
that we're ignoring the bigger picture of the ecosystem that we're playing in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, such good information. We could talk all day, I'm sure. Lots of great stuff to unpack. But Mitchell, tell us the easiest way for people to get a hold of executive abundance.
Yeah, normally I could easily say go to my website, so it's mitchelllevy.com, and that'll point you to the book or other things associated with what I'm doing. And of course, Amazon is probably the default place that people go to.
Yeah.
What I ended up doing with the book is it is in Kindle, it is in hardcover, and then I read the audio version myself.
Mhm.
So if you like the interview and you want another 5 hours with Mitchell, go and buy the audiobook. And I guarantee all along the way, you're going to be taking notes and changing your thinking process of what really is important and how do I show up as a better
Mhm.
human, adding value to those around me.
Yes, absolutely. So much great content. Thank you so much for being here today. And everyone who is in a leadership position or has a leader, let's go ahead and get this book and start putting this into practice, make the world a better place.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.